Hey, everybody. We're going to take some notes today on the Articles of Confederation, America's first national government. And to just kind of summarize what this government was like, it was bad. In fact, we should be talking about all the many ways that it was bad. There are a few nice things to say, but if you were to maybe follow some sage advice of if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, well, this would be particularly short. We'd be done in about 3 minutes. But we're not doing that, and there's actually a lot of rough things to say. And it's this first form of national government that is why we end up with the form of government that we have now, the Constitution. So let's learn a bit about the Articles of Confederation. So it was created by the Second Continental Congress during the war years. So right after the Declaration of Independence is signed, the very same year, they create this form of government, but it's not ratified until the war is winding down, until the very same time as the Battle of Yorktown in 1781. What was the holdup? Well, two key issues delayed ratification. One was representation. How would each state in this new national government, notice we're saying state now and not colony, how would each state be represented? How many votes would each state get? Oh my goodness. And then what about the claims that lots of states had to their territory far west of their normal colonial boundaries? So I'll show you a map and kind of explain that. Well, this first form of government only had one branch of government. There was no separate judiciary, no separate executive branch, just a legislative. And each state could send anywhere between 2 to 7 delegates, whatever they felt like within that range. But they'd only get one vote. So the five of you would have to decide what your state's vote would be, or the two of you. So you can probably already picture some issues that might coming out, especially if there were only two people or something along that lines, right? So here's a map that shows these Western land claims. Take a look at this. There's Connecticut, right here. But Connecticut, according to its original charter granted by the king when it was established in the 17th century, actually claimed land way over here. Same with Massachusetts, way over here. And look at Virginia. Virginia is even also claiming land that both Connecticut and Massachusetts are claiming way over here. And here, North Carolina, south, it should just be able to go, according to its original charter, all the way west. So what were they going to do about these Western land claims? A lot of arguing. No one wanted to be able to give up their, the land that they thought they should get, etc. To show you a little bit, another map here. Look at Virginia. Virginia claimed all that. Look at North Carolina. Look at Georgia, right? And then this area right here. So there's our Ohio River forming our boundary. Okay. But not any of Spanish territory, etc. So this first form of government then, it only had one branch of government, a Congress. What were its Congress's powers? Read through to yourself right now the list of things that Congress could and could not do. You're probably already seeing some problems here, right? Congress could coin, that is, make coins like nickels, quarters, that kind of a thing, but could not print money. All right, like dollars, okay, bills. Um, Requiring 9 of the 13 states had to agree to a law in order for it to pass. That's about 70%. That's quite a high threshold to pass, right? Now, what about the states? Under this new national government, each state could do these things. So if we were sitting in class right now or doing some sort of a pear deck here in online learning, I'd ask you to look through those 3 slides of information and try to make a case for what you think might be the most critical weaknesses under the Articles of Confederation. Is it like if you had to rank like the top 3 issues, problems, potential issues under the Articles of Confederation, would you pick one of those 3, something on this page? Or this one, or if we go back to the other side of the map, this one, having one branch, one vote per state, that sort of thing. I want you to think about that for a moment. What do you think were like the most serious weaknesses under the Articles of Confederation? For me, I would probably make a case for saying how they couldn't borrow money, like and they had no power to tax. That they could ask states to pay taxes, but they couldn't require them. I mean, if you ask me to pay my taxes, I'll be like, no, thank you. And that's what the states did. They were like, sorry, we don't have money for that. We got our own issues, and they did. But why would they? Yeah. Oh my goodness. The idea that they couldn't control any sort of trade between the states, and that states are just kind of their own little nation states, if you will, how they're acting here. They had all this authority and power uh, that clearly wasn't subservient, held in check to the National Congress. So, lots of issues, lots of serious issues. And it's one of the reasons why this form of government is just the temporary first form of government, and we have a constitution. But I told you, if we were looking for something nice to say, let's try to find something nice to say. And here it is. And it's a big nice to say. And it has to do with those Western land claims. This area that's highlighted in this bluish color here was referred to as the Old Northwest Territory. You know, that Ohio River Valley where the French were before, with their Métis culture and everything. This area now, right, would make its own new region, and these territories would now begin to enter the Union as states. Well, how that happened? Two really important laws were passed under the Articles of Confederation that set an important precedent for America. What were they? Well, they both have this word about the land ordinances. The first is the Land Ordinance of 1785. And it said, okay, we're going to survey, like this surveyor guy that you see here on the top screen, part of your screen here. We're going to go out there and measure and see what's here. And we're going to sell this land to the public. And we're going to divide it into equal sizes on a grid-like pattern. And we're going to use the money from the sale of that public land to finance public education. Whoa, that is federal dollars going to support public schools for, the common man, for the everyday person idea. That's pretty revolutionary as far as, a big shift in where this country is headed, that we're going to take money from the sale of some sort of asset or resource, right, and use it to educate children for free. That's pretty crazy. So, this is the first law that was a really big positive and sets up this legacy of the federal government spending money, or the national government, I should say, spending money on public and funding public education. But once the land was all divided and sold, then people can start like buying the land and living there. And that's when these territories can start becoming states and becoming not the Ohio Territory, but the state of Ohio. So, the second law that's passed 2 years later under the Articles of Confederation is called the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. And this said how this allowed for the process of all these new states to be formed in this territory, and that these states would be treated as equals to the original 13. And this is an important precedent. So now, whenever a place was, territory was ready to enter the Union, whether it be Iowa or California or wherever, as the country begins to expand, they wouldn't be treated as like second class territories or new states. Every state would be treated the same and given equal privileges. And these new states, so in this area that I showed you on that little map of where Ohio and Michigan and Wisconsin and Illinois and Ohio and Indiana are, these new states would protect civil liberties, have public education, and prohibit slavery. And nobody blinked an eye about it. No one thought, oh, no, why are we going to stop the spread of slavery here? Oh, this is terrible. Well, everybody thought that slavery was kind of dying out at this point. They thought, the tobacco economy is kind of waning. We don't think this is going to be a viable labor system anymore. Tobacco can't really grow that in Wisconsin and Michigan, or these other cash crops. So it's not a big deal. Absolutely, sure. And it set this precedent now where territory would be free from slavery. Okay, so this is an important legacy that we have this new ordinance passed. So I want you to think about, and if again we were doing some sort of pear deck or in person, how these two laws, the Land Ordinance of 1785 that allowed the public sales, the land of the be divided into a grid pattern and the money used to finance public education, and the Northwest Ordinance that allowed these new territories to become states and the things that it would prohibit them. How would these laws impact you if you were a landless farmhand, a merchant, or a small farmer? In most of these cases, they would be really good laws and give you some opportunity. However, that Land Ordinance of 1785, how it divided land into those grid-like patterns, those grid-like patterns of the sale were so big that only really wealthy land speculators could even afford them. So the average sort of guy might have thought initially, oh gosh, I could have a chance to go out there and make my way. But the reality of it was, nope, the rich people had already purchased up the land and now they were going to make all the profits and divide out land for you. But on the positive side, there was definitely a place for people to now continue to keep going farther west. And all this land would now be free from slavery. Merchants would have new places to sell their goods, more, local economies forming. We have startup places like Cincinnati and Cleveland beginning to just now form during this time. But at the same time, back to the bad news, another rebellion that's really rough occurs in Massachusetts, because where else? Everything happens in Massachusetts, right? It's called Shays Rebellion. Happens in 1786. Okay, so right in the midst of when those land ordinances and things like that are happening. After the American Revolution, there's a deep economic depression. After all, we had lost our number one trading partner with Britain. We were at war with them. And now, well, they didn't exactly want to pay us good prices for our things that we were trying to sell to them because they were a little mad, right? And there was a lot of destruction from the war and everything as well. So there's a deep economic depression. There's high inflation. Things are bad. Farmers, especially in Massachusetts, were angry over high state taxes that were passed. That sound familiar? High state taxes being passed and people upset about taxes. And led by this man named Daniel Shays, farmers in Western Massachusetts, they attacked a courthouse and a national arsenal where they were storing weapons inside. Well, this rebellion, it goes on for months. And our new government under the Articles of Confederation doesn't have any sort of a military to put it down. So there's nothing to do. It just goes on and goes on with no way to put it down. This inability to put down a rebellion within our own borders leads to some people to call for a revising of this national government. Alexander Hamilton writes a letter to a bunch of fellow elites and says, hey guys, let's meet in Annapolis and let's talk about revising the Articles of Confederation. Calls for the meeting in Annapolis, Maryland, lovely little city, right? Nobody shows. Why? People don't like Alexander Hamilton, bless his heart. And then, so what happens then? Then they go, okay, let's try again. And let's meet in Philadelphia the very next year. So in 1787, group of men meet in Philadelphia with the intent to supposedly just revise the Articles of Confederation, which is, as we kind of know, a big lie. Because what do? They actually throw it out the door and they form a brand new government, the Constitution, which looks nothing, thankfully, like the Articles of Confederation ever did. A little cartoon here. History teacher joke. Okay. So With that, I'm going to end this video. These are our notes. You can go back through and look at these slides, and the slides, of course, will be posted as well. But now you're going to go ahead and watch a video that's about some of these weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation and the founding process of the Constitution. It gets a little silly at points. It's about 20 minutes long, but it's actually very well done in explaining some of these problems associated under the Articles of Confederation and why that kind of led into the Constitution.